Hello, everyone, to your English Story podcast. This is the first episode of this show aimed at showing how much English can have an influence on people's career. And today, I'm very pleased to have Yafit as our guest. I've known Yafit for many years, and she's a dear friend of mine. And when you speak to her, you forget that she's not a native speaker. So I thought it would be interesting to hear her perspective on our English journey. Hello, Yafit.
Stephanie, nice to be here.
Thanks for joining us. So just for our audience, I would like you to maybe introduce yourself and also tell us from 1 to 5 how much English has had an impact on your current career. 1 being the lowest and 5 being the highest.
Yes, so most of my life, I have worked in the high-tech industry, and most of my day was in English, even though I worked physically in an office in Israel. The correspondence at the workplace, emails, everything was done in English. Of course, among ourselves, we spoke Hebrew unless there was an English speaker and we had to speak in English. But most of my day was in English, especially for me that I worked with customers in the US. So I would
I
say
see.
5 for
4.5. Okay. And I'm also interested in hearing about your switch to NVC, Nonviolent Communication, and how the English language has helped you develop this kind of communication.
Yes, I started with nonviolent communication. Actually, my initial courses were in Hebrew, indeed, in Israel. But as you grow in any practice, I suppose you look for more teachers, for more courses. And nowadays, with the world being so connected and global and online, I started taking classes with teachers who gave workshops to an international audience, and the language that connected all of us was English. So I was able to take those courses. And as I progressed with my studies, with my practices, I started to give my workshops in English because it was for an international audience.
So did you feel that you had access to more advanced learning because you knew English?
Yes, I could choose. I had more variety to choose from. I could say, well, I want this. I had courses with a teacher in Sweden. I had teachers in the Netherlands, in the US. So I had a lot more variety to select from and see which teacher I connected most with and continue with them. So definitely. Yeah.
And now, is it more natural for you to give your services in English or in your mother tongue in Hebrew?
I feel very comfortable in English and giving the workshops in English, also because I learned a lot of it in English and I'm very used to it. I feel very comfortable with the language itself. So it comes natural to me. I have given it in Hebrew as well. And of course, that is very comfortable as a mother tongue. But I wouldn't say that I prefer to give it in Hebrew because it's my mother tongue rather than English. English feels very comfortable.
Amazing. So tell us, how did you get there? What's your secret?
Well, we started at school, actually rather late, I think, 4th grade, which nowadays I think it's late, with the usual classes. I was lucky that elementary school, my teachers were actually originally Americans, so they had the right accent, they had the right they were qualified, of course, like any other teacher, but with the right accent and the mentality of the language. And I have to admit that I am good at languages. So I picked it up quickly. I also love grammar. I love grammar. It might sound funny,
You're
but
one
I
of
do.
those.
And yeah, one of those, the few of those. And I just loved studying the language. It was a passion. So I put in hours. I liked learning the grammar, the rules, and it helped me a lot after that when hearing somebody uses, let's say, a specific grammatical rule to immediately click and understand how to use it. So a lot on television as well. So we're lucky, at least I know some countries in Europe, they dub the films and the programs to their local language. But for us, Nothing was dubbed. Everything was in its original language, which usually was English. So listening a lot to programs on television helped a lot.
Right. So for you, starting early, primary school, I mean, I started in junior high school at sixth grade, so even later than you. And from the French system. And as you said, as you mentioned, TV was dubbed, so we never had exposure to English. So the only way at that time to get exposure to English was to travel to the UK or to the US. But on a daily basis, we didn't have much of an opportunity to hear English. And I think that's something that's lacking a lot in Europe. So starting early, having exposure to native speakers, native teachers, and all sorts of listening material like TV or the radio. That's the secret.
Yes, I think television was the best thing to advance quickly.
And was there any time in your journey, whether at school, at university, where you had this switch that you felt that investing in your English was crucial for your personal development, for your life?
That's a good question. I'm not really sure I thought about it when I was starting out as a kid. Thinking about the future, we certainly did not know that language, it will be so global and connected as we know as it is nowadays when we tell our children, well, English is the language. I think for me, it was just a passion for languages. I just really liked it. I was always interested in different cultures. So it kind of went together, the cultures and languages, and wanting to know about other countries and how they are. And it connected me with that as well.
So did you feel you had a curiosity and a wish to travel and get to know more the other cultures or the English-speaking cultures in particular?
Yeah. Yeah, I really wanted to travel. I always wanted to travel. When I was 14, I asked my parents to go to summer school. There was this rumor about summer school in England, and I so wished to go. I didn't go. They couldn't afford it, I assume. But yeah, it came together with really curiosity on meeting people from other places and speaking other languages.
Right. And do you think that the language that having this love for English was something that helped you beyond your career, beyond your like maybe even as an identity? Do you feel like it brought to you some kind of is it part of who you are?
Yeah, it was more that because I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grow up. I didn't know if I actually needed English. But for me, yeah, I think you very well put it. It was part of who I am, who I was, my identity, speaking English, wanting to later on at university, wanting to hang out with when we started to kind of get to know people from other countries or people English speakers who went to Israel to do 1 year of studying. I was attracted to them. I wanted to make friends with them, to speak the language, to hear the language, to hear about their experiences. So for me, it was more identity than thinking about career, as I didn't know what I wanted to do later on, or what it would
Right.
look like even.
Yeah, I can imagine. And I hear you, everything seems so easy. Like you had this passion for English, and then everything went so well that you managed to reach a very high level. Was there any downtime or times where you felt like it was difficult, or maybe you have a funny story about your learning, something that happened to you that is not quite traditional?
There were definitely down moments where while studying before I became fluent, I hated making mistakes. And
Mm.
sometimes, so as I see it, there are like two groups of people when it comes to learning a foreign language. One group doesn't care. They speak, they go out, they know they make mistakes, but it's all good. And the others who are really, really nervous about it. And I'm one of those who are really nervous about it and making mistakes. And many times let's say, said something, and a second later, I realized it was a mistake. Many times I didn't realize, and I still make mistakes that I don't know of. But when the times that I did realize that I made a mistake, I was embarrassed, even though it's not my mother tongue and you're allowed to make mistakes. But those moments were difficult for me. And other moments where I really wanted to say something, but I didn't know how, so I didn't. I just
Mm.
didn't say it. And that's
Because you
quite
were preparing
frustrating.
because you were preparing the sentence in your head, and it was taking so long that by the time you were ready, the crowd moved to something else.
Or that I wasn't sure about it, so I just didn't say it. Yeah.
Okay. And do you still feel this way?
Less so. I might open up with, I'm not really sure how to say it, but blah, blah, blah. This is what I want to say. I might say, my English is not my mother tongue, therefore, but I will say the thing. So it's a little bit better, but I have this introduction
Right.
sometimes
So you
to,
you
because
feel you
then
have
it
to
makes me feel,
apologize.
or to feel safe. I think to feel safe. If they know it's not my mother tongue, if I name it that I don't know how to say it well, then I feel safer. So it feels maybe less shameful, let's say. So that's a trick that I do.
Interesting.
It works for me.
Right. Yes. You know, I run a language school, and the number one reason why people don't want to attend group lessons is because they are ashamed
Mm,
of speaking in front of other people. Like speaking in front of the teacher, okay, that's fine. But speaking in front of a group, that's something that they feel is too much. And I can hear with your story that it's something very common, that this shame in a way because we're not native speakers. But I mean, you told us the trick, but how could we go a step further to be okay and actually value the fact that we try and that we get to where we are?
yeah, I think that what I tell myself now is that it's really okay, even if I make mistakes, even if it sounds funny, even it doesn't matter. It's not that important. The importance is to speak. And when I ask the listener, sometimes I ask the listener how it is for them. They are not bothered at all. They say, as long as I understand what you want to say, it doesn't matter if you made a mistake or if you said it this way or that way. I just want to understand what you want to say. So with that in mind, that the listeners don't really care actually, then I feel more free to say what I want to say, even if it's in a funny way. And just to remember, it's not that difficult or it's not that shameful, let's say.
The story we tell ourselves is much more tough on us than what we would hear from other people. So that's a good advice, that we need to remember that if people are okay, if they can understand us, can have a conversation, then there's no problem.
Yeah.
Okay. And do you still work on your English? Do you try to maintain your English or learn, or do you have a
I
routine
do.
for that?
Yeah. I try to read books. That's how I try to maintain it. Of course, I watch Netflix and I watch movies, and so that also keeps it up. I but mainly is reading books. I find that helpful to maintain the language in my head, because if it's not used or if I don't use it for a while, I forget words. My vocabulary used to be really, really, really big. Because now I read less, it kind of shrunk a bit. So my main thing is to read books. Even I also enjoy reading books. So I think it's mainly watching movies and reading books in English.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it's like going to the gym. You
Yeah.
need to keep going. It's not you've never reached a goal. It's always a matter of getting to a certain level and maintaining it, and that's the challenge. And we have a lot of people who relocated to the US and came back to Europe, but they're taking lessons then because they know that their exposure to the language is not as big, and they're really scared of losing their English. And when you think about all the efforts we put in to become fluent in English, then would really be ashamed to lose it.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that. Another way would be to take conversational on course, just to be able to speak it, to continue speaking it in a group. for example, which I might do actually.
Okay, we can talk. All right. Well, now to finish this interview, I would like to ask you a question that I want to ask all my guests. The first one is is there an expression or a word in English that you particularly like?
I like many words, but now I need to think about it for a second. Phenomenon. I love the word phenomenon. I don't know why. And sometimes I use it in, even though it's more, let's say, formal word, I
Mhm.
like to play with it and use it in an everyday, simple conversation just for the fun
Interesting.
of it. So,
Okay, great.
phenomenon.
Phenomenal. Perfect. And the second question I have for you is, do you have a book or some resources that have helped you or that you recommend, that you could recommend our audience?
Again, I'm going to be a geek. It's say the books that I have now is idiom, dictionaries. It's
Don't tell me you read a dictionary before going to bed.
I love the dictionary. I love words. I love knowing where words came from. But books for improving, it actually does improve the language because I noticed, at least with Americans, they use a lot of expressions, many expressions in idioms, and it makes the language richer and makes me feel more closer to native speakers, or to level of native speakers, if at least I know what it means, but also it's so natural to me that I use it. So one book would be
Right.
an idioms book, expressions book, and the stories behind the expressions. So
Mm,
they tell also the stories behind the expressions and where they come from, and they're so interesting. Like
yes.
Raining Cats and Dogs. The story
Right.
behind it is amazing. I'm sure many people know about it. So, yeah.
That's very interesting. You know, there are, I think, more than 10,000 phrasal verbs in English, and it's almost impossible to remember all of them when you're not a native speaker. But at least if you understand, I mean, if you read a book about idioms, why not? And if you hear about the origin of an expression, if you understand the logic, then that's a good way to get to use them. And you're absolutely right when you say that using phrasal verbs, for example, are a way to get closer to the way native speakers speak. I mean, as a French speaker, native French speaker, there are lots of verbs in English that are close to the Latin or the French way, but they're a lot more formal than the equivalent phrasal verb. So if you use the French sounding verb, then people know you're not a native speaker. But when you start using phrasal verbs, then you know you're part of them. So
Yeah.
anyway, I would like to thank you, Yafit, for your time. I thought it was very interesting. And if people would like to be in touch with you, would you like to tell them how to find you?
Yes. I'm on LinkedIn, Yafit Gabai on LinkedIn. I have a website for my nonviolent communication workshops that I give. It's YG Workshops at the moment. And
Okay, I'll put
yeah,
the link
that's it.
in the description. Okay, thank you very much, Yafit, and see you soon.
Thank you. See you.